Hi, today we are going to talk about keeping your vow to God. It is of the utmost importance that you keep your vow to God. I mean, He keeps His vows to us. Why should we not do the same thing for Him? But we have to be very careful about what we vow and how we speak to God. Numbers 30:1-2 says, Moses spoke to the heads of the tribes of Israel, saying, This is what the Lord has commanded. If a man vows a vow to the Lord, or swears an oath to bind himself to a pledge, he shall not break his word. He shall do according to all that proceeds of his mouth. Ecclesiastes 5:4-6 says, When you vow a vow to God, do not delay in paying it, for he has no pleasure in fools. Pay what you vow. It is better that you should not vow than that you should vow and not pay. Let not your mouth lead you into sin, and do not say before the messenger that it was a mistake. Why should God be angry at your voice and destroy the work of your hands? We also have Deuteronomy 23:21-23. If you make a vow to the Lord your God, you shall not delay in fulfilling it, for the Lord your God will surely require it of you, and you will be guilty of sin. But if you refrain from vowing, you will not be guilty of sin. You shall be careful to do what has passed your lips, for you have voluntarily vowed to the Lord your God what you have promised with your mouth. So we're seeing here that God takes it serious, that if we say we are going to do something for Him, that we need to keep it. We can't justify it 10 minutes later in any way. Matthew 5:33-37 says, Again, if you have heard that it was said to those of old, You shall not swear falsely, but you shall perform to the Lord what you have sworn. But I say to you, do not take an oath at all, either by heaven, for it is the throne of God, or by the earth, for it is His footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great King. And do not take an oath by your head, for you cannot make one hair white or black. Let what you say be simply yes or no. Anything more than this comes from evil. So not only do we have to be careful about fulfilling our oaths when we do take one, but we have to be careful of what we promise God in general. So for one, Matthew is saying, Jesus in Matthew 5 is saying, don't take an oath by yourself. If God's not asking it of you, don't promise Him you'll do it without praying about it, consulting Him about it. There's certain things that we do that are very biblical that we can promise Him we'll do because it's in the Bible and we are to follow the Bible to the best of our intentions. But I'm going to use remaining single as an example for many of my examples because it's something recently God has asked me to do. So for an example, if God has not asked you to remain single, don't promise Him that you'll remain single for His service because He might have something else planned for you. There are people that He wants married, that there is a purpose He wants them to be married, whether it's you use your spiritual gifts together or, there's many different reasons. God's God. I'm not going to try to guess. But there might be a reason why He wants you to get married. So don't promise to remain single if He hasn't asked it. That's an oath that He hasn't asked you to take. That's what Matthew 5 is saying. If He asks you of it, then simply let your answer be yes or no. Do not add to it. If He does ask you to remain single, but doesn't give you a timeline, don't add, yes, I'll remain single for the rest of my life. Just say yes or no, because He might only be asking you to remain single for a year while He prepares a mate for you, while He prepares your heart. And if you say, I'll do it for the rest of my life, you could have missed out on a blessing and a plan for you that He had. My personal story is that He had been preparing my heart to remain single for His work for a while. He had put this deep desire in my heart for His will, but I had also a deep desire to get married. And at some point, the idea of getting married became a burden in my head, and I couldn't even focus on Him anymore. And I was like, God, why can I not bring my thoughts back to You? This is actually getting really annoying. My thoughts stayed on the idea of getting married, and it started bothering me everywhere I went, everything that I did. finally he sat me down. And, well, I should say during this entire time when that was becoming a burden, little questions would come up like, how are you going to do your calling if you're married? Like, you wouldn't be able to give your husband enough time because marriage requires a lot of commitment. Your husband might not want to, you have to submit to your husband unto the Lord. But if he doesn't want to switch churches, like, because my calling is to go on Sunday mornings, is to travel churches. If he doesn't want to do that, if he wants to stay in one home church every Sunday, you won't be able to do that. I mean, marriage requires compromise and commitment between, and it wouldn't be bad on his part. It would be a legitimate, we would need to work things out. How are you going to be able to do that? Okay, that question kept coming up in my mind. Well, God finally sat me down and gave me several verses about remaining single. And one of them is Matthew 19 says that some stay eunuchs because they were born that way. Some stay eunuchs because others basically made them eunuchs, and then others for the sake of the kingdom. And he told me that this would be for the sake of the kingdom. And that, yes, his return is so soon that it would be for the rest of my life. And I cried. I'm not going to lie. I bawled like a baby. And I didn't tell him necessarily yes or no in that moment, because he had put knowledge in my heart in that moment. I hadn't read these verses that I'm reading to you. I hadn't read these yet. And he put knowledge in my heart that if I were to make this commitment, that I could not back out of it at all. And so I sat there and I cried and I fought. And it was the hardest decision I ever had to make. But I told him, God, you put this desire for your will in my heart for a reason. I will do it. And guys, not only has my own flesh fought me on it, but the devil has fought me on it really hard. Like really, really hard. So if you make a commitment to God, the devil's going to turn around and try to get you to break your vow. He will. You'll hear the devil's voice. Oh, it's okay. You don't have to keep this. I mean, God wouldn't require this of you. God's not going to hold you to it. God's a graceful, loving God. He is a graceful and loving God. But the fear of the Lord keeps us in obedience to him. The reverence of how holy he is. I mean, he keeps his vows to us. Why can we not keep it to him? So yes, it has been a struggle afterwards at times because of that. But my love for my calling is greater. And the thing is I know that this temporary struggle on this earth will be worth so much more in heaven for eternity, when marriage doesn't even matter. Like in heaven, none of us will be married in heaven. So I'm willing to go through it. And so you guys, just to know, if you make a vow to God, it's serious. It needs to be kept. And the devil will fight you on it. And God may test you on it. I mean, God does test us. So if you make an oath to God and you believe that it is his voice, and you believe it is his voice telling you it's okay, ask him if he's testing you. Do it, because he's tested me on stuff like this before. One time, I wanted to move out before it was my time to move out of the house that I was currently in. God had told me I was there for my calling. And the devil was really attacking the house, and it almost felt unbearable. And so I was like, God, can I move out now? Can I move out now? I got yeah, I'll take care of you. I said, oh, okay. And I got excited on my own head, and I tried to start going off and planning and doing my own thing. And then he reminded me of something I just learned about him testing us in the Bible. I'm like, God, are you testing me? And I'm like, okay, God, if there's anything that's not of you in this, start closing doors for me. Bam, 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 bam. Like, doors started closing. At the time, it was not time for me to leave the house. I do feel recently he's calling me that it's okay. I've done what I needed to do for my calling in that house. But it was like another year later. It's been a year and a lot more struggles. Everything we do for God is not going to be peaches and cream. Promise you. It's not. It's been a struggle. but it's worth it for God because we gain our treasure in heaven for eternity. And at the same time, we're gathering souls and gathering people for the kingdom here on earth. The struggle's worth it if we save even a minimum of one soul. Of course, we want more, but if we can save one soul from hell, everything is worth it. Sorry, I went on a tangent. But you guys, that also means oaths. We have to keep oaths that we make in high emotion times. So when we are extremely happy and ready to go for it, or we are extremely sad, we have to keep our oaths onto God. Psalm 66, 13 through 14, David's talking here, and he goes, I shall come into your house with burnt offerings. I shall pay my vows, which my lips uttered and my mouth spoke when I was in distress. So, and the same thing with Hannah in 1 Samuel. She made an oath to God that if you give me a son, he will be yours, and a razor shall never touch his head. Guess what? She had her son, and she didn't get to raise him. She took him to the temple and gave him fully to God. She kept her vow. And God ended up blessing her greatly for that. She ended up going to have more kids. Samuel was very blessed in that. And we just need to remember that no matter what our emotional state is in, we need to keep our vows what we say. And that's why it's better to say, that's why it's better not to make a vow at all. In Ecclesiastes 5, 2 through 3, right before about the scripture about the vows, it says, be not rash with your mouth, nor let your heart be hasty to utter a word before God. For God is in heaven, and you are on earth. Therefore, let your words be few. We need to speak in reverence to God and to put the fear of God behind all of our words. Is this something that we can keep? Is this something that we can uphold for the rest of our life? Or are we going to stumble and fall and justify it? I mean, I've heard people justifying, well, I told God I'd do this, but I don't think he would require it of me. We just saw scripture. God wouldn't do that. Don't speak for God. Go to scripture. Scripture speaks for God. I believe that's all I have for you today. God bless.